Well, welcome everyone to another installment of The Way It Is. I'm your host, Luca Andolfatto with Remax Service First Realty, and I am thrilled and delighted to have not only a good and longtime friend of mine, but one of the foremost interior design, architectural designers here in the city of Kingston, Mr. Bryan Stone of Stone and Associates. Thank you for joining us, Bryan.
Thank you for having me.
Bryan and I were chatting before we got onto the live call here in the recording, and just to give you some history, Stone & Associates has been around since 1978. First started by his father, David Stone, as a primarily graphic design, and then his mom joined forces. And then Bryan, you've joined in 1984. So Bryan, most of my podcasts to date are all obviously focusing on the pandemic, the big white elephant in the room in our lives every day. So I guess I'll let you, why don't you just tell us how that has affected, I know how it's affected real estate. I keep telling everybody the pandemic's the best thing to ever happen to real estate in Kingston. So why don't you tell us how it's changed the interior design or the architectural design world?
You know, in the pandemic hit, I think like most people, we were kind of in a state of not really understanding exactly where things were going to go. And I think that was not only for my business, but also for many of my customers, both on the business side in commercial design and also in residential design, where they weren't really sure if the finances were going to come in. They weren't really sure if they could afford the project. So, you know, the immediate first, call it 3 months, it was almost an all stop where everybody, you know, all projects ceased, all buildings ceased, everything sort of hit a wall. And it wasn't shortly after that it basically did a complete about face, where we went from, you know, doing a lot of Zoom calls and training and you know, reworking websites and kind of doing things in the back end from a corporate standpoint, to kind of going to 200% with everybody now saying, I want it now. You know, a lot of people were forecasting that commercial stuff was going to basically just die, and that, you know, all the restaurant jobs are going to go away and all the office projects were going to go away because nobody was going to work in their office anymore. And I certainly haven't seen that. In fact, I've seen a lot more. For every person that said something like that, I've had other people that have come to me and said, actually, you know, I'm coming at this from a different angle because I have the same people. I'm looking at this as a point that I'm growing. I'm going to take advantage of the growth, but yet I need more space because I need the space to socially distance and put in proper traffic patterns where we could kind of, you know, closely pack them in before. Now they need all of this more space that they can function in. So from a commercial standpoint, we're now doing a lot more additions and expansions of buildings to accommodate existing staff plus add new staff in to kind of pick up the demand, which I think has been a lot, very, very forward thinking of those companies to do that, because even though things may have slowed down temporarily, they certainly picked up. And from a residential standpoint, I think that it was shortly thereafter that people sort of realized that I can't go to a restaurant and I can't go on my vacation and I can't do it and I can't. So what can I do? So let me make my oasis my house. If I can't go south, I'm going to make my house amazing, because I would have spent $15,000 or $20,000 on this. So now I'm going to take a bathroom, a study, or whatever, and make it amazing.
And we see that exactly in the real estate side of things. I mean, the pandemic taught the world that as long as you have a good internet connection, and if you're going to be stuck with your family in a home, you better make it a place that you like to live and work and to enjoy each other's company. So I get it for sure. I guess that raises an interesting point, because I you know, obviously my mind was more in the residential side of things. So curious that you did bring up the commercial. I guess given your current business, how do you see that ratio as a percentage? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? How are you seeing it play out?
No, I've seen that, you know, our commercial to residential right now would sit at about 70% residential and 30% commercial. Okay. And it's funny because even the commercial ones, I found that a lot more of the commercial customers, while they're still slightly hedging their bets, what they have been doing is they have been proceeding with expansion plans, redesign plans. They've applied for permitting because they understand the length of time that it takes to get permitting, particularly when you start to involve planning departments. Mm-hmm. So when you get all those pieces, they know the length of times that those things take. So they sort of look at it and say, look, we're going to roll all this stuff out. We're going to get the permits in position. And then once we're at that point, then we can make the decision as to whether we're going to go or wait or, whatever the case may be.
Have you seen on the residential side any trends developing in terms of what people are doing to their homes? Someone put a bug in my ear that there's this interior design pandemic trend now where people are going away from open concept back to more formality, more walls. Tell us what you've seen or how you're seeing it.
In the projects that I've been working on, I certainly haven't run across that. Certainly a lot of the ones that we're working on the buildings are quite large, and so they have this space. But I think that a lot of the things that we've been doing has focused, somewhat on the pandemic, just in terms of having a good space with good lighting and definitely, sound insulation everywhere. So sound in the walls, sound in the ceilings, sound everywhere, so that when you close that door, all the doors are safe and sound. So when you close that, you're in kind of a sealed environment. And it really does help when you have 2, 3, 4 people that are all on Zoom calls. They're all talking, and you put on these zeroing headphones, and you think you're just talking normal, and then everyone else is like, "You're screaming. Why are you screaming?"
Yeah, I got a new set of earbuds, thinking it would make my life for hands free, and it's the worst thing ever. I feel like I'm in remember the movie or the show Get Smart? I feel like I'm in the cone of silence all the time, yelling. But anyway, from the time someone thinks about doing something to their home and doing maybe interior design or having a renovation done, what are some of the things people need to, or questions they need to ask themselves, before they reach out to someone like you? Or is there a checklist that they should go through?
I think that definitely understanding wants, needs, and really, frankly, for some reason, people, they're very scared about budgets, and it's a critical piece of my puzzle. And it's funny because 90% of the time, I'll say, "So what's your budget?" And they'll say, "Well, I don't really have a budget." My immediate answer to that is, "Okay, so I'm going to spend $150,000 on your bathroom." And they say, "Oh my God, what are you nuts?" And I was like, "Okay, wait a second. So you do have a budget? Because if you didn't, then that wouldn't be a problem." Right. And so, I think that really asking the questions going in to say, how much do I have? How much time do I have? How much disruption is this going to be to my life? All of these things factor into it. It is a long process, from the first meeting and having people into your house first and foremost. We would need to go in to get some measurements and create some plans and, pick all the finishes and the fixtures and all these things. And that sort of thing takes time. And people have to be ready for that. And I think a lot of the times people think that these things just happen instantly. And they definitely don't happen, particularly when, as I mentioned earlier, when you get into building permits and planning permits and things of the sort, it does take some time, and things do cost a lot, and everything right now seems to take longer. The supply chains take longer. There's a huge amount of work out there, so getting trades takes longer, and properly scheduling things so that when somebody does come, they're efficient with their time. They do as much as they physically can do in one shot when they're there, because if they have to come back, now you're waiting again.
Yeah, no, and that echoes exactly what's happening in the real estate side. I work with a custom home builder, and we're pricing 2 custom homes on 2 of his lots. And he said, "Luca, normally where it would have been 5 months, I'm going to say 7 months minimum. Just to, windows are an extra 4 weeks, trusses are an extra 4 weeks, or what have you, right?" So yeah, and I guess that was one of the questions I had, and I'm sure you're seeing it on your end, but obviously cost of materials. What's the percentage increase you're seeing on that side of things?
At least 15, at least. And I think that not only is it the cost increase, but it's also the movement of materials. I just find that the actual procuring something is one thing. Most, if not all, of our materials, except for dimensional lumber and things that you don't necessarily see, they come from abroad. They could come from the US, they could come from Europe, they could come from somewhere else in Canada, but it has to get shipped here one way or the other. And that is a big piece of the puzzle. And unfortunately, it's a big unknown to the puzzle, because, you really, people are very reluctant to say, "Okay, so how much is this going to be?" And you say, "Well, are you going to tile one wall? Are you going to tile all the walls? Are you going to tile, if you have 1 lift versus 5 lifts?" And, that can certainly be a big piece that people may overlook when they're budgeting their project, is the cost to actually get things physically from one place to the other.
Understood. So in the architectural design or interior design world, is there a formula in terms of what people should spend percentage-wise of, say, the value of their home or the equity of their home? Is there anything like that? I really don't know, so I'm just sort of throwing that out there.
So it's not something that I certainly think about too much, and it as a homeowner myself, obviously I go through it and say, I know my house and I know how much the houses that are around me are, and I've always kind of equated it to a couple of things. I get people all the time that come to my doorstep and they say, I'm really considering this big renovation, and it's typically when people are thinking about big renovations, going up, going out, really making a wholesale change to something, and they say, should I just buy something? And I say, well, I think that's the question really comes back, unfortunately, to the customer, because if they love the location and if they love the neighborhood and if they love all those things, you have to live somewhere. So, you might look at it and everybody says, well, you don't want to be the most expensive house in the street. If you do it, inevitably, you're going to get the benefits of the design and the new construction and the new fit and finishes for the longevity of that build. And then typically where you might go ahead and do that, then inevitably the people that are around you are going to continue to do the same thing. So, while you may have the most expensive place on the street for a short period of time, inevitably everybody else is going to work it up. And I've always said they're not making land. So if you like where you live, do what you want to where you live. If you don't like it and you say, what, it's okay, it's not crazy, but I want to put a pool in, right? And I want to landscape the whole backyard and make this shared view and this shared environment from my house into my backyard as part of the overall design of my building. But obviously putting in a pool when you haven't built it in is a big expense. And that's where, you have to look really hard and long at it and say, I can either buy this house that has a pool and has all the infrastructure there, and it may not be the street or the subdivision, but, or I can bite the bullet and put it in here. And, I'm obviously going to, price my house way up as soon as I do that, but the value of the house is going to go up equally. So, unfortunately, there is no real quotient. I think the only thing that I have seen of late is that, cost of construction right now is kind of teetering in the kind of 275 to 300 a square foot for, what I would call very nice, not crazy, but definitely not, center aisle at a box store. Certainly very nice. And people always ask me, like, if I buy a door, well, how much is the door installed? And typically my experience has been, if the door is $100, it's going to cost you $200 to $300 to get it installed. So your $100 door is going to be $400 hanging there.
Yeah, no, and we obviously golf a lot together, so we took some of the sentences right out of my lines there. You're right, and in the market today for real estate, the bullishness of the market has done exactly that, which is you're buying for future value, for future appreciation, and the adage of, you said it earlier, being the most expensive house on the street truly isn't holding much water anymore, because invariably everybody's going to be drawn up that way, and the choices are limited. The choices are very limited in terms of what's available out there. And interesting for your costing per square foot, because I know some builders that recently, given even my own builder, it's that anywhere from 300 to 350 a square foot now. So it's not inexpensive anymore. As far as, apart from obviously the massive addition, if somebody wanted a 2-story or some kind of addition, how much are you seeing in your world in these outdoor spaces being created then? And are you doing any of that?
So we are. Right now, obviously, we're not doing much, but now is really the time that the people that are sort of on top of their game are the people that are planning for it now, knowing that this is when, we live in a world of containers, right? So all the containers that were ordered, last sort of spring are now being manufactured and being shipped in. So anybody who wants to get the pick of the crop, are going to have to kind of have their brains in mind for that. We certainly have planned out several of these. Nothing has really been instigated because of where we are right now, being February the 2nd. But, the plans are in motion to get those things. And we certainly are finding a lot more of that, where people, again, I think it's this extension of this oasis. So, as you and I golf, we spend a lot of time outdoors, And that is a huge, huge benefit that not maybe everybody gets to do. And if somebody can make their house a beautiful space where, they can come home, they can open up some French doors or big sliding patio doors to have this big extension out onto a deck with a fire pit and all these different things that really extend the season and extend the living space beyond the footprint of the building. It's similar to, say, a basement. A lot of people are like, oh my God, it's the basement. You just throw things down there and they go there to die. And I've always looked at that as a huge, benefit. You've got a 1,200 square foot elevated bungalow. Well, you've got a 1,200 square foot basement. And if you can, trick the brain through, smart design, through lighting and through sound and through, proper placement of windows and really make it so that it doesn't feel like a basement, where you just captured yourself a huge amount of space. And, I think that's one thing that a lot of people, once they see it, they believe it, but it takes a lot to see it. And it does cost a lot. I mean, the average basement renovation, it wouldn't, for something like that, I wouldn't say anywhere, $150,000 to $200,000 in your basement is not unheard of. And people are like, oh my God, are you insane? And it's like, well, what if you put a bar and a home theater that you can watch sports and have the guys over, send the kids down while you're, having your space? Because again, it's all about, being together, but being apart.
Well, I'm still struggling with a lot of clients that are coming to grips with this new reality, as I'm sure you are, Bryan, with this costing and the cost of materials. And unfortunately, we've all had the experiences, and we all know the guys that'll come in and I can do that for 30 grand. Well, those days are over. If you can even get the labor done for 30 grand or something like that. But anyway, that is fantastic. I think we touched on a lot of timely and really good things to give people some food for thought. And for those of you, Bryan, again, not only interior design, architectural design, project management even. So if you think you found yourself in the midst of a project that now has gotten out of control or needs to be brought back into control, he's your guy for that as well. So, Bryan, I want to thank you very much for your time, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to hitting shots in the golf course soon enough. Let's hope.
I love it. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. It's a great blog, and I'm glad I could be a part of it.
All right, thanks. Take care.